Hello everybody, great job on the French Revolution unit, and I hope you enjoyed the Prezi and the video at the end of the Prezi, Waterloo by ABBA and its awesome 70s Swedish pop outfits. As I said in that video, this history book on the shelf is always repeating itself, and nowhere is that more evident than with revolutions. We studied the French Revolution and how it starts off as a tax issue, becomes a rights and role of government issue, and ends up in reign of terror and military dictatorship and ultimately constitutional monarchy, although even that's going to be fraught with more revolutions. We saw it with Haiti. We saw it with the Latin American revolutions too. And to this day, revolutions end up being far messier than just the simple phrasing that we read about with Locke. You know, you've got rights, the role of government is to protect those rights, and if the government's not doing its job, well, then we have the right, and as Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence, the duty to rebel. Well, that sounds great, and it worked out with a lot of fighting, but it worked out in the United States. It doesn't always work out everywhere else. In fact, it's the norm that it doesn't work out so cleanly. And right now, that place that's struggling with that right now is Syria. Syria is a long ways away from the Episcopal Academy. If we go from our little home right here, this is where our classroom is, looking out onto those birds out there. If we type in Syria and jump to that country, way across the Atlantic, past the Mediterranean, to a country that, as you can see, is a rough place to live. It's got a lot of desert, it's got mountains. Here is Damascus, where a lot of the action happens in Syria, and where the chemical warfare, unfortunately, happened in Syria as well. Syria represents the most relevant revolution going on right now. It's when we dig in a little bit deeper, we can figure out that if we do some web searching, of course, we'll see that there are a lot of different players involved, not just the Syrian government against its own people, but groups from around the area. We can scroll down on this article, for example, and Russia's involved. The United States is involved. The UK is involved. Turkey's involved. Iran's involved. Saudi Arabia is involved. Qatar even is involved. And Jordan. All its neighbors there in the Middle East have something to say about it. But that makes it sound like it's a conflict amongst leaders of governments and has nothing much to do with the people themselves. If we keep searching, though, we've heard about this refugee crisis. There's a great graph that I saw. This is a graph of refugees heading towards Europe from war-torn countries, many of which have had recent revolutions, and some, like Syria down here, are having a revolution. As you can see, the flow of refugees from Syria, and each one of those marks represents about a busload worth of refugees. The flow was relatively mild way back there in 2012. If we move our marker, however, forward, you can see that the flow of refugees starts to increase and get larger and thicker, and the amounts landing in European countries, Western European countries, gets bigger and bigger. Well, that seemed like a lot then. And if we fast forward to now, look at the volume of the stream. It is a wave. It's a tidal wave of refugees coming from Syria and from many other places, but mostly Syria, you can see here. There's Iraq, there's Syria. This is a huge issue, and those are just the people that actually make it, of course. When we dig even deeper, it becomes even sadder when we talk about the people who don't make it. If you type a search for Aylan Kurdi, Aylan Kurdi, this comes up. He was a boy who tried to make it over with his family. He was a 3-year-old boy, and their little boat capsized in the waves, and he and his other siblings did not make it, along with their mother, did not make it out of the water alive. His picture ended up all around the world. There's a relief worker being lifting the body of Aylan Kurdi out of the water. When you get this deep, you understand that it's not just about nation states. It's not just about large numbers of refugees. It's about individual people who are dealing with this, and how hard it is for countries from the outside to help, even if they've got the resources to help. And that's what we're going to do in class. We're going to read about the general background for this Syrian conflict, and then we're going to explore the different options that the United States has to help, from full-out military involvement to limited engagement to negotiated settlement of the civil war to leave it alone. It's not our problem. And we'll explore those four and debate those in class and see just how complex and difficult this issue really is. To get started, I've made another EduPuzzle video. It's a BBC intro about the Syrian crisis, and I've put questions in there for you to answer as your homework. And then once we've done that, we'll come in tomorrow, and watching it will probably generate for you more questions than you're answering in that video. We can discuss those questions and look up who certain groups are, like Hamas and Hezbollah and other actors that we may not be familiar with at this point. And once we go through that, then we will divide into our groups with our options for intervention in Syria and go from there. See you tomorrow.